Okay, Shake, thanks for joining me, mate.
How we doing, Wes? You all right?
Yeah, good, mate. Thank you. How are you? How are you did you have a good Christmas? Start a new year, okay?
Yeah, it's been all right, mate. It's a bit quiet with everything. Wales is in what you guys would have as a tier 4 lockdown, so there's absolutely nothing open, only supermarkets and hospitals, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, you guys have had it. I sure you. To be fair, you guys have had your pants pulled down
Yeah.
repeatedly, and even more so recently. I would say. I hear the guys like over by us, like jabbering on about how bad they've had it, but you guys over there, I think, considering how small a community and that is over there as well, you guys have had it pretty bad, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. The infection rates they saying in the area is high, so I understand, they've got to be on the side of caution, but I mean, there's no consistency in my mind. There's no what's the word I'm looking for? There's no rhyme or reason for some of the decision making.
Yeah,
It's
logic seems to have
yeah.
gone
There's
out the
there's no
window.
there's no agreed. I mean, schools start back next Monday. And I work in a school, so next Monday I'll be allowed to go into an environment where there's 1,700 kids and 200 staff. Yeah, over Christmas they didn't want you mixing with any other members of your family. So
Yeah.
it is what it is. We just got to ride it out now. I see they talk about this vaccine should be up and running by March, April. I'm not somebody that's an ambassador of vaccines, but if it means we can have a bit of normality, I think everybody just wants to get back to how life was 12 months ago.
Yeah, exactly, mate. And it's just like you can be. It seems to be extremes. You got the negative people, you got the people who aren't too bothered, but then on the other side as well, you've got the people who are so far down the conspiracy theory line,
Yeah.
and you got some people who are so far to the line that they would literally lock themselves in their own wardrobe and be fed for a straw, and
Yeah.
everyone in between is just sort of lost in this camp. And I'm pulling my hair out because I'm sort of I'm one of those people which you strike me to be as well on Facebook and stuff. You're just like, well, hang on, sure, where the fuck is the logic? What's going on? Like,
Yeah.
why can't anybody be sensible?
Um, I watched the Andrew Marshall this morning with Boris Johnson on there, and he didn't answer a question straight. Andrew Mark absolutely terrorized him with the questioning because, again, lots of the questions were sensible, reasonable, answers, and he couldn't give an answer for anything. It's like I said, mate, it's unique times. I mean, I'm 50 this year, and in all my years, I've never seen anything like this. And I'm fingers crossed we get it sorted and we never got to see it again. But madness. I mean, it's impacted us, the MMA community in particular, hasn't it? Do you know what I mean? We can't compete. We're not allowed to train. I mean, gyms in Wales, overall, I think it's 6 months of the year we've pretty much lost. So it's not fair. My take is live your life, shield the vulnerable. If you're uncomfortable going into a gym, don't go to a gym. But leave the gyms open for anybody that does want to go and keep fit and keep their mental health at a good pace.
Yeah, I'm with you, mate. Like, I'll wear a mask everywhere to make other people feel
Yeah,
comfortable.
same as me.
But when it comes to taking away my personal choices and my personal freedoms of can I go and exercise and like open it up, and if you want to go, you can go, and if you don't because you're worried, don't go to gyms.
Yeah,
And they said like oh, professional athletes can go train and do like that's all very well, but the next generation of professional athletes are being killed now because the
yeah.
amateur athletes aren't being given a chance to train and develop. And I just think it's just so bad. And with our sport, obviously, the transition between amateur and pro is very prevalent, and people see it. If you were to say a footballer or something like that, you don't really see the transition between amateur and
Yeah,
professional.
you're right. Yeah,
With
yeah.
our sport, like we see it and we notice it.
Also, as well, I think we're a unique sport. I mean, with the wrestling, with the jiu-jitsu, with everything, we need contact. We're creatures which are only going to evolve in the sport if we've got contact. And at the moment, as you said, it's only the elite level guys that are being allowed to do that. And I'm not daft, mate. Listen, there's gyms all around the country are not abiding by those
Yeah.
rules, and I'm not knocking them in any way or form. But like, let's just get some normality back. Let's get back to where we were 12 months ago and everybody getting on with a healthy lifestyle. And as you said, these young amateurs now, my amateurs, I've got a big team, as you know, Wes. And my amateurs have lost 12 months. And don't get me wrong, it's been great. They've been able to improve technically and all the rest of it, but they've lost a year of competition. That's a year they're never going to get back.
Yeah, and the thing is now, from someone like my team at the moment at A3 is pretty much consists only of amateurs.
Yeah.
I've got people who are like, I'm going to go pro. I'm going to go pro, and it's hard to convince people that listen, this ain't the time to go pro just because the circumstances.
Listen, there's no shows out there for the professionals. Yeah. I mean, you've got Cage Warriors doing their thing, but you've got to be on the high end of the experience level to get on there. I've got a load of novice guys, and I've got a brilliant relationship with Cage Warriors, but there's only so many fighters they can put on, and I'm under no illusion that my guys are, making their debut or 1 or 2-0, we're not going to get the opportunity of somebody that's got 10 pro fights, and rightly so. But let's get something. I'd have loved to have followed the New Zealand route. If they'd said to me, "You've got to lock yourself in the house, not leave for 6 weeks, and we can go back to some form of normality after a 3-month period," I think we'd have all bit their hand off on hindsight.
Yeah, I think so, mate. Just some sense of something coming to an end would just be great for everybody. You'll suffer if you think, right, well, there's the light at the end of the tunnel, but to not know, it is absolutely just torture for us as well, because we're always aiming for something. When we sign a fight or when we start training, we're always aiming for a fight or a 10-week camp or we're always aiming for something. So to have no goal in sight is a bit like, it is it's demoralizing.
It's like the jiu-jitsu team, the majority of my team and not MMA fighters, is jiu-jitsu guys.
Yeah.
And they've not been able to do any competition, only supposed to be doing solo drilling. What on earth solo drilling is gonna do for you, I really don't know. There's only so much online learning you can actually stomach. But like I said, mate, fingers crossed they've got the vaccines up and running. I'm not an advocate of vaccines, but I'll happily take one if it means I can get my life back. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean the UFC have sort of paved the way for people to follow and shown that, listen, this shit can be done. And okay, the lower end shows can't follow suit. They can't do that sort of thing.
It's financially impossible to follow, mate. Like the Cage Warriors events, the money that Boylan and the crew there are investing into the hotels, the bubble, the testing. I'd hate to put a figure on what they're putting in. The UFC are at another level again. If you've got to remember, they're flying people in, they're keeping them isolated for anything. Whether you're in, if you're in Abu Dhabi, it's 5 days of isolation in different hotels. But it's safe. There's nobody died at the UFC. There's been a couple of positive tests, but them guys have fully fit athletes who in 2 weeks have turned it around and back training. I'm 11-0 this year with COVID tests. Anyway, I've had 11 and I've negative every time. But I've been very fortunate. I've got a couple of lads on the UFC and the Cage Warriors scene, and it's kept me busy. But like I said, the majority of my guys, probably 90% of my students, are not ever gonna step foot in a cage. So it's been a real tough year for those guys.
Yeah, I hear you, mate. I spoke to Ian and the guys over there about a couple of my guys, and he basically said we've got no up and coming pros for them to switch over with because of the situation, and end up in a conversation more about if I'm looking for a fight, because the experienced guys are what's needed now. Like that's just the way it is, and there's a stark reality. But hopefully, summer's coming around the corner. We will turn the corner, and it'll be put down to a shit year, but hopefully we ride it out and we get back on track.
Yeah, fingers crossed, pal. Fingers crossed.
Oh, but for you though, in terms of the MMA and stuff, mate, as far as I can remember, and I've been fighting since 2004 or 3, one of the two. And as far as I can remember, you've been on the scene. You maybe not quite as far back as but as far as I can remember, I remember you being on the scene. But primarily as a coach, you didn't fight until much later on, did you? You had a couple of fights a little bit later on.
I'm trying to think. 2003 was my first fight.
Okay.
Yeah, back in the old ML Sports days.
Yeah.
Open match, no headshots.
Yeah, I know it.
I think it was down in Bath with the first, and then they started doing, Rossi Nakaro and Heathgate started doing the grappling strike Wales. That's where I met. I think that's where I met Paul Reed for the first time. It
Yeah.
was probably around about 2003, 2004, probably, on that circuit. But yeah, I say to the youngsters now, you know, and I say this on every event, they don't know how lucky they are. I mean, back when we were competing back in the day 20 years ago, there wasn't no shows doing it with a cage. You know, you're lucky to get a boxing ring if you were lucky. You know, no medicals, and the platform they've got today. Everything's in place now. If this is something you want to follow and pursue as a career and make a living out of it, you know, as long as you work hard and you've got a certain amount of attitude and commitment, there's no reason why anybody can't make a go of it in this sport. You know, if you're in the right place, because what Cage Warriors have done on the domestic level, and you know, you look at the gyms now. You'll be the first to say this, whereas a BJJ black belt, you never even heard of one back in 2002, 2003. You know, you couldn't pick one out anyway, could you? You know, whereas now, every gym in Wales that I know of has got a BJJ black belt coach in there. You know, so they're very fortunate. But the level now, I think, of some of the lads, you know, you probably same as yourself. I got some kids coming through there, 19, 20 years of age, that are going to be terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So,
I mean, I started. I was about 20 when I started, and I remember it was at Trojan Free Fighters. My first ever fight was at Culverhay in Bath. It was one of those where the fight got stopped more times to push the mats back together
yeah,
than
yeah, yeah, yeah.
anything else, you know. But then we had to fly a black belt over, and we had I think we had Carlos Escohega was the first black belt we had over there, but there was no one, just not. It was unheard of to have a black belt training at your gym, and like you say, you know, there was just no one. And now the evolution, people are just they're set up to you know, have a go and go for it. And I think I teach some of these guys now, and I see them at like 15, 16, they come into my class raw. A year later, they've absorbed so much, and you look at them and think, wow, if I could have had, after a year of training, if I could have had that knowledge.
Yeah, spot on. And again, the experience on the mat. I mean, you come and train at my place, you know, we've got 18-year-old lads, we've got 50-year-old men that's just looking for a bit of fitness. And we're all training a jiu-jitsu lesson, and we've got 6 black belts on the mat, X amount of bronze belts. We've got UFC stars, we've got Cage Warriors world champions. You know, they're in such a wonderful position where they've got world-class coaching, world-class facility, and world-class athletes training on the same mat. There's only one way they're going to go. I mean, I had this conversation the other day. What other sport in the world can a grassroots level amateur train in the same session as a UFC level athlete? You know, it's like, I say to these lads, it's like one of the local football teams having Beckham pop in and having a kick around with them once a week, you know. So try not to take it for granted, because it's all they've known. I'm trying to say, don't take things for granted, because it was never always this way. And as quickly as the UFC guys can come, they can go as well, the way they're cutting and chopping and changing. So make the most of every minute of it. But yes, it's certainly a different level and a different place MMA is to what it was back in the day, the old ML Sports and the grappling strike. I mean, my first grappling strike match was in a function room in Brynmawr Rugby Club in Wales, and again, I was the same, pushing the mats back together. There was a group of Hell's Angels bikers had pulled up, and they were watching it. It was quite surreal back in the day, but wouldn't change it, mate. It's give us good grounding, and it's made us the coach, the people we are, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day, and I did think to myself, if I could have swapped my career and just be coming into it now at 20, or where I am, I wouldn't. I'd keep where I am now, because I find myself, obviously you've followed me for years, I'm a flitter, mate. I'm into so many different things, but I get obsessed and I fall into them deeply. And one of my things could be, say, stand-up comedy. I've been doing a bit of stand-up comedy, but I get a bit nostalgic and a bit disappointed that I wasn't there at the beginning. And the same would say falconry. I hate that it started in like the 1500s, you know. But with MMA, I can honestly say I was there at the beginning, you know. So I wouldn't. There's no way I'd change it and go on to be now, because I think once you've fought professionally and you've been around the world and you've done stuff, you realise that where you fight and what you achieve is only a personal goal anyway. There's nobody actually really.
I've lost you there, mate.
To ever do it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're back. Sorry,
Yeah.
mate.
Sorry, man.
You're back. Sorry. Yeah. So it like Anderson Silva, someone's name might not even pop up if you talk about greats now with the new era fans. So those achievements are sort of personal. All that matters is the experience and what you get from fighting, what it is that you want from it. So what I've seen and what we've been through, and how I've seen us evolve, and like literally being on top of someone in a fight and having to explain to the ref that no, you haven't got to stop the fight in the position. Those sort of things they're amazing. They're worth their weight in gold, you know.
Agree, mate. I mean, turning up at events and people from the crowd willing to take a fight because somebody's dropped out, and I've seen all sorts, mate. I've spoken to a few people about it. I ought to write a book because some of the stories are so far from reality that you think I'm making it up, but there's plenty of guys that were around at the day. Um, two people fighting on the same. I've seen somebody knocked out and then fight again on the same. Can you imagine it today? I mean, how we never picked up some serious injury or even a death back in the day. I really don't know. But
you'd have people like Paul Jenkins. Who now people might look at Paul and think that he's a journeyman. Now, if Paul's a journeyman, he's not like any other journeyman. It's not like you get these journeymen who just turn up. I've seen Paul though walk up to a fight, just so willing to fight, walk up and chuck his towel to someone in the audience and get them to corner him.
Yeah.
And then go out and have a good performance.
You have a look at Paul's record. He's like he's one fight off 100 pro fights.
Yeah.
And it's a mixed record. It's like a 50-50 split on wins and losses. But if you when you talk about journeymen, you know as well as I do, Wes, there's guys out there, I won't name names, but they turn up, they'll roll over, they'll have their little payday and off they go. Jenkins would turn up and come to win. So he was at that level back then. He's fought Dan Hardy, Paul Daly, guys that went on to have established UFC careers, and he was he's a dangerous man, Paul. Do you know what I mean? He used to be, he could turn your lights off, couldn't he, with one shot? He used to be a bang. My favourite story with him, I had Marshman. He was 3-0 at pro, and I put a post up. I think it was on the old Cage Warriors forum back in the day, and back on the Facebook page saying I've been let down at 5 days' notice. I'm looking for a pro fighter to fight Jack Marshman. Jack had a bit of reputation on the amateur scene, and he was 3-0. He'd been banging everybody unconscious in his fights. And Jenkins texted me, "Are you still looking at yourself for Marshman?" I said, "Yeah, we've got somebody." He said, "No, I'll come up and fight him," he said. I said, "Oh, Paul, I haven't got this, the type of money. I'm looking for a novice pro." "I don't want no money." He said, "I'll come up and I'll do it for nothing." And at like 5 days' notice, he's like rocked in on the day, an hour before the fight, got his medical done, wrapped his hands, jumped in there and was competitive right up until the third round when he got stopped, But that's Jenkins, although he just loves to fight. And, if he was young enough and fit enough, I think he'd still be doing that now, mind, to be fair to him.
Oh,
but,
100%. Yeah.
He'd have a fight on a Friday, Saturday and a Sunday, 3 days running sometimes. He'd just off, he'd go and travel. And as you said, travel on his own. But again, he's doing well, Paul. Now he's got a good team down there, Dogs of War. He's done well as a coach. He's got some tough fighters coming through. And he's somebody that I say to all the youngsters, he is the godfather of Welsh MMA. There's no ifs or buts on that. He's the man that led the charge from the very beginning.
Yeah, he was. I remember from the early days, mate. Obviously we had Lee Remedios locally, but Paul, whatever show you were at, and Paul would. If Paul was on the card, I wasn't missing the fight. I'd come out and I'd be stood out watching it. If I was warming someone up, I'd be stood on the landing looking down in if it's in a nightclub or something. Because you never know. If Paul could have turned up super fit, ready to fight anyone who the UK can put in front of him, or he could turn up and really train for 6 weeks and give just as good a performance because there's no quitting him and he's up for it.
And he's a character as well, isn't he? You know what I mean? He's got that persona about him. He's entertains the crowd. You don't know what he's going to do. You know what I mean? You're on edge whenever you're around with him because you just don't know what he's going to do next. But no, I'm glad he's still on the scene and I'm glad he's doing well because he's somebody I got an awful lot of respect for, Paul.
Yeah, likewise, mate. Likewise. So yeah, you were active early on. You did a bit and stuff, and then when did you decide coaching was your route, mate? When did you think, was it one of those things where you were training and it led into it, or you decided?
Yeah, I was training, and I was at the gym I was at. I was doing a lot more coaching because I was one of the more experienced guys there. And in end of 2007, a lot of the boys that we were training at the time said, were encouraging me to start my own place. So that's what we done. 2008, I found a little cellar in a nightclub, matted it out, and off I went. I was still competing then, MMA. Had a couple more fights when I was still head coach at Lady Combat, as we were then. We're now showing mixed martial arts. But I was about, I think it was 38. My last fight when I was 38. And it was just one of those fights where I was fit, I was ready, you know, I trained my ass off for it, but my brain was telling my body to do stuff and it wasn't reacting how it should. And more so after the fight, you know, I felt like an old man, you know, I felt beaten up. I was probably, and this is not exaggerated, I was probably a month recovering after that fight, you know, from the bruising, and it was a case of, you know, right, I've got a good team around me. I don't need to be leading from the front now. Let's try and concentrate my efforts into the coaching a little bit more. You know, as much as I'd love even now at 50 to be able to roll back the years and have a fight, whereas because I do miss it, I miss it every day. Father time waits for no man, and I would have got hurt, I think, if I'd carried on past 38. You know, could have been a lot worse for me. So I enjoy, you know, my career was mainly amateur. I was too old when I got into it. You know what I mean? I'm 50 this year, so you can work the sums out. I think it was 30 when I had my first, you know, no headshot bout. But I wouldn't change it. I learned a lot, and I transfer a lot of what I've learned now into the coaching side of it. And obviously, it had its positives because we've got a successful team now, you know. So probably about 2009, probably 2010 was, I'm trying to work out my age now. Yeah, about 2010 was when I thought, right, I'm done with the MMA now. Let's still compete in jiu-jitsu, but concentrate on the coaching.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is you'll get to a point as well where you'll maybe take a fight that really it's below your level, but you don't want to lose.
Yeah.
So you end up taking that fight, or you end up fighting against someone who you think, fuck me, 2 years ago, just because you didn't want to hang it up. And I'm always in turmoil of whether I'm retired or not. And because part of me always thinks like, I didn't really give it my all. And for some parts of my career, I did. But then other things come up, like doing this podcast and stuff and, you know, other bits that I'm working on. And I look at some of the guys like your Jack and that, and I'm like, or Nad Narimani. Nad's a perfect example. Like, I look at people like Nad and I'm like, what he's doing, the commitment, how it's everything, how it's... like, I don't want to let all those things go to be that committed to something that I was that committed years ago to, you know?
Yeah, and spot on then what you said. Today's day and age, back in the day, as I said, you go back to, I don't know, even like from 2012, 2013, you know, as a promoter, I could pick the phone up and get somebody at 24 hours notice, no problem at all to drop in for a fight. Yeah. The amateurs today are training like pros, and, you know, it's not a pastime anymore. It is a profession, even at amateur level, I believe. Unless you're willing to give that 6 days a week, several times a day, you've got no chance of competing at the high end of the sport. You know, I've got amateurs that train Monday to Friday, minimum twice a day, because they're doing it full time, because they're in a position where they're living with their parents and they've got overheads, and they're very, very fortunate to be in that position. But as you said, it's not something to play at. You've got to give it 110%. You've got to be all in, all out, I think, with it as a fighter. It's not something you think, oh, well, I'll have a fight this year, maybe not next year. And the level's mental now, mate. I mean, you look at these IMAFs and some of these kids coming through on the world stage at amateur, terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, you look like people like Oban and people like that who like just come up out of nowhere when they get to the pro scene and stuff, and you're just like, I mean, I'm fortunate enough because I got to see Jack's career progress because obviously knowing you, and like seeing him go through the amateur ranks, and then when he comes onto the pro ranks, and you're just like, people didn't smash people up like that back in our day. People weren't that dominant. And I remember you used to have to go to America to achieve or to be around people of that level. You know, I had to go to America to train a few times because we didn't have people. And you see people like him come out of Wales, and you're like, fuck, man, like this guy, like if you're watching from the outside, because very few people follow the amateur running. So if you look at him, you see, you're like, fucking, where has this guy come from?
Yeah.
Oh, this guy's been a pro for 4 years. He's just been fighting amateur. I mean, he's been a dedicated professional athlete for 4 years, and going pro has just been like, this is it. You're overdue. For me, I think I think you should go. I think you should turn pro after you're ready. You know, I don't think because we never had that
No,
option. Yeah, I think that it should be, you know, when the fighter feels like they should turn pro, or when the fighter's like, oh, should I go pro? The coach should have already been thinking about it 2 fights ago. If you're turning pro and your coach is not thinking that, maybe you just have to step back slightly. You know, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I mean, if you want a blueprint of how to approach an MMA career, I think how Jack's, you know, had it bang on. A long amateur career, no rushing, plenty of jiu-jitsu competitions, plenty of amateur boxing. The IMAFs was a turning point because I would have liked to have kept him amateur probably a little bit longer, but once he'd won that European IMAFs, we had no chance of matching him domestically on any shows. And again, a pro is good. It's important, particularly if you want to make a real living out of this. It's important you have the right people around you. And I mean, you see so many people taking bad fights early on in their career, you know, and I've seen it as in my club, you know, as a coach that didn't have the experience that I've got now. You know, I'd probably made different decisions 10 years ago if I had the experience I've got now.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's about stepping up that competition a little bit at a time. You know, once you get the UFC, you're on the big stage. So what you need is a what I call an apprenticeship, that when you sign that 4-fight deal on your first contract, you are fully anticipating to sign another one at the end of it. Not go in, have 2 fights, 2 losses, come back out. You know, getting there is not enough these days. You're not going to change your life in any way or form by going into the UFC and losing 2 fights. You know, the time you've paid your management fees and your taxes and everything else is next to no money. But the apprenticeship, like without Jack, for example, when he walked out for the UFC in Copenhagen and there's 10,000 people on their feet, he's not overwhelmed because he's been selling out 5,000 seats at the Ice Arena for the last 3 fights. He's been main event. As he said in his interviews, the UFC was a lot less pressure than his last 3 fights in Cage Warriors, because you know what it's like. You fight for a world title, you've won it. Then you've got to defend it. And then every time you walk into that Cage Warriors arena, if you lose, you're 3 or 4 fights away from the UFC again.
Yeah.
You know, we'd been fortunate that we'd been in a position when Jack was 3-0, we were offered a contract from the UFC, we declined that. And again, this is where more coaches have got to think for the long game, not the short game. You know, I'd have signed him up at 3-0, he'd have probably been in and out in 2 or 3 fights.
Yeah.
Not going to get back in. When he was 9-0, we were offered a fight, but he had a broken hand, so we turned that down. And also, after he'd won the world title, he was 10-0. I was in London with Marshman for the UFC event, and we were offered a deal again for Jack. So this was the 3rd time they'd come. And I stood firm and said, no, I want him to defend it. So he'd agreed to fight Scott Malone, and I felt that we had a duty to the crowd in Wales who supported him as well to honour that fight. Yeah. And lots of people say, well, what if he loses? What if he loses? My attitude was, well, if he loses, he's not ready for the UFC.
Yeah.
You know, so we took that. But all those little pressure cooker environments have been the perfect apprenticeship. So now he's not overawed. He's not overwhelmed. He was very fortunate as well. Marshman had been in the UFC for 4 years, so he'd gone and cornered. So he understood how the UFC worked. He understood the format. So nothing was like being a rabbit in headlights then, you know. But I say to a lot of my guys are like, want to get in UFC, The UFC will come when it's good and ready. Do your apprenticeship. Again, we've been held back by 12 months because there's been no crowds. But I think it's important fighting in front of those big crowds, you know, domestically, just to get used to that feel, that trepidation. I knew, you know, Jack didn't fight until after 11 p.m. for his last 4 fights at Cage Warriors. And it's a long old day. And on your own turf as well in Wales, you know. So, you know, any advice I would give to any coaches out there, there's got a protege coming through, and I have a lot of coaches, you know, will message me privately and ask for a bit of advice on some guys that they've got at that point, like how Jack was, and I say to them, when it's the right time, you'll know it's the right time, you know. You know?
Yeah, I think like for me personally, I don't think enough coaches take accountability, and they sort of see it, or they can get lost in the draw of the big show as well, you know, or oh, it makes more money, or it's more exciting to have pro fighters in the camp. And I mean, just recently I was offered for one of my guys within the last year. I was offered for one of my guys. They're like, he's 5-0 at amateur. We got a pro fight for him. I'm like, nah, he's not ready. They're like, no, he's smashed. I'm like, no, listen, My guy's not going out of the second round. I've never seen him on his back in
Yeah,
trouble. I've
yeah,
never seen him led there, me shout across the mat, post, put your knee to the cage, get
yeah,
up. I want to see him in a grind. I want to know that when his back's on the mat and he's looking at me with his eyes as much as say, what the fuck do I
yeah,
do?
yeah.
I know that he will listen to me and either hold out or he will grind it out and won't just see the easy option out. And the thing is, you can be as much as of a fighter as you want, but until you've been there and you've been in that position, and as for me as a coach, until I've seen you in that position, I can't say you're ready, because once you go pro, you'll
Can't
be
go
in
back.
that position as someone elbowing you in the face.
Yeah, and also you can't go back. You can't go
Yeah,
into that pro fight and think, "Do you know, I made a mistake now." There's no shows, legitimate shows. You're going to say, "Well, come back and fight amateur."
yeah,
So it's a big stepping stone. Make sure it's the right time, I always say. I mean, if it was up to me, I like the boxing ethos where you can get the amateurs 40 fights before they go pro. Some of them are touching 100, aren't they, these amateur boxers? But
yeah,
in an ideal world, I would love, and don't get me wrong, there's always individuals that are just so athletically gifted that sometimes you think, well, pro would probably suit their rule set a little bit better. But they are few and far between. And I think, like I said, I keep going back to that word apprenticeship. You don't become a doctor by going to medical school for a year. It's years and years and years of hard work and hard practice and dedication and giving up lots of parts of your life to get to that point. And it's no different in any profession, and fighting is one of them. If you want to be the best in the world, you've got to give up your weekends, you've got to give up your nights out with your mates, you've got to give up the shitty food, you've got to give up your chocolate, and you've got to be willing to be training every day like it's the only thing on earth that matters. And you've got to do that consistently, as you said, as an amateur for 3-4 years, and then as a pro for 3-4 years. So you're not getting into USC from the minute you decide I want to do MMA is something that I want to do. You're talking, it's an 8-year process.
yeah. I mean, and even we're talking at the highest echelon,
Yeah,
but for me, even at those lower echelons, I mean, like if you've got a guy who's just like, listen, I know I'm not going to go UFC, or my goal isn't go UFC. I just want to be the best that I can
yeah,
be. Well, making that jump is still the wrong decision. Like it's Cage Wars. Obviously, I've got a great relationship with the guys there, but they don't give a fuck about you. They want to build the best fighter that they can. So when they sign you, if you go 1-0, you're now an option for them. You're now someone who they're thinking, right, we got someone 1-0. They're going to sign everyone to a contract now as well. We know that. So they
yeah,
sign you. If you go 1-0, they're thinking, right, we got someone we can use here a bit. If you go 0-1, oh, that you're immediately you've taken not just one step back,
mm,
you've taken 2 steps back, but now you're signed to an organization who you can only fight when they want to use you. So
yeah,
you can't even go and get 4 fights under your belt to get rid of that one.
yeah.
You're at the point where you're like, right, I've got to sit and wait for Cage Wars, but they're not thinking about you. They're busy because they got loads of other hungry guys who have just got their 1-0 and they need to
And in the current climate, they've got an abundance of people wanting to fight. So
yeah,
they can take their pick. Again, going back to this is why I want some normality. March, April, hopefully in the summertime, the shows will be back, and some of the grassroots, the academy shows, particularly in Wales, the adrenaline fight nights. Up with you guys, there was always plenty in the Bristol area of grassroots MMA. Tear up. My mind's gone blank. I think you guys have fought on a couple of the shows.
yeah, we've had loads here over the years. We've had Terror, we've had Knuckle Up, we've got Rage up the
Rage, yeah, that was one I was thinking.
got,
Apology,
yeah. So we got loads, and then we've got Meltdown now, which is coming through for the guys.
yeah. Paul Sullivan's doing a good job with Simon with that, yeah. So
Yeah. So we've always had a sort of, but of course as well, we also had Ultimate Combat right in the beginning, which was Dell and those guys from ML. They created Ultimate Combat, didn't they?
yeah,
And so we've been lucky in that we've always had like a hub, if you will. So yeah, we've always had opportunity to get people on shows and stuff.
yeah. And the more of them shows, the better. As long as they're professionally run. I'm a keen advocate of the safe MMA process. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's from not just as a promoter, as a coach. We had, and I'll use his name. We had a guy, Dave Alcott, that trains with me, and really talented lad, Dave. He still trains with me now, but obviously can't do the MMA. And he was ready to fight on one of the ice arena shows. And when he had the brain scan, it found a problem with like an old clot on the brain that the doctor's words, and this was a doctor, head in a football could end his life. Now there's way too many shows that are flippant about, oh, well, so a lot, you can't put a price, I don't think, on well-being. As a team, we'll always find that through sponsors, and we can get a full safe MMA clearance for 500 quid, and then to renew that every year is like 130 quid in Wales.
Yeah.
I don't think 130 quid, you get like people say, oh, it's a lot of money to start off. I say, if you're going to be a plumber, you don't just turn up to somebody's house, say, can I borrow your spanner? Can I spoil you? You've got to pay for your tools. And for me, that process of making sure you're medically clear to fight is paying for your tools to go in and do the job. Yeah. Now, if Dave had gone in there and been killed, how would that affect me as a coach? I got to face his wife, I got to face his children. I'd have probably walked away from the sport. And that's not me being overly dramatic. That's the impact that would have had on me. So as much as it was awful that he found this, it's a fantastic thing that Safe MMA was in place, and we stopped the kid putting his life in danger. So as expensive as it is something I think that young fighters need to be out advertising themselves on Facebook, trying to raise that 500 quid just to get the ball rolling. Even if the shows they're fighting on are not necessarily Safe MMA cleared, I think it's important for your own benefit and your own peace of mind that you're fit and ready to fight, And
also, it makes it a lot easier to get a Cage Warriors call up. I'm already got Safe MMA. I'm ready to go. Boom. You're one step ahead of the other people. I think I'm with you. Maybe it's because we've seen the beginning of the sport, and we've seen the how people weren't killed early on, or how there weren't any serious injuries. Like, you do sometimes think, fuck, how did we get away with this for so long? Yeah. And you see that, and now you think, right, there's something in place. We should be utilising it. And I think I had this on a podcast that I did recently with Ben Lambert, who owns A3, and I was saying to him, in my mindset, the license or the owner should lie with the promoter. So make the promoter responsible for ensuring the fighters are Safe MMA or registered, because that way, the only person who's going to be greedy or keen enough to fill an arena is the promoter, because the fighter just wants to fight. The fighter just wants to fight. You don't care who's there to watch him. He just wants to fight. So no promoter wants to lose money. So they're going to need to fill. So they're going to take the last minute guy. Yeah, will you step in and fight? If you make the onus on the promoter, I think then you make it a lot safer as a sport as opposed to the individual.
And I think if all the promoters bought into it, I mean, I run the academy shows, which is mainly amateur with 3 or 4 pros, but the pros have got to be Safe MMA cleared, and it's a ball ache, let me tell you, because as you said, I could have somebody that sold 300 tickets and they've injured themselves a week out, and I got to get somebody that's Safe MMA cleared to fit in. And we've lost money on shows, but as I said, you can't put a price on safety. If all the promoters came together and said, right, let's make sure we do it, the fighters would have none of these shows that they go on and put their careers at risk, Because as you said, why are promoters not putting the Safe MMA in place? It's a financial cost. It's a financial cost to me as a promoter, because I've got to have 2 doctors, I've got to have a paramedic company, I've got to have 2 ambulances, I've got to make sure certain things are in place, I've got to make sure all the fighters are medically cleared. But I mean, as I said, I'd rather have the ball ache and lose a couple of bob than lose somebody's life. That's my take on it, And it all even
you lose your credibility. You don't really lose your life. The life is, I mean, I know the life would be the worst end of the scenario, but you lose your credibility, because how do people speak about, Rich Shore, he promoted that event, and you hear about that kiddie who died because he couldn't be bothered to do this.
Yeah.
And you're like, hang on, I clean my mats after every single time we have a session because I don't want to get staff. I put everything away so it looks neat. I follow all the rules. I do all this, but I couldn't be fucked just to make sure the fighters have got Safe MMA. Yeah. It's a shit way. And I think the only trouble now is we're faced now a lot of the time with a lot of promoters they got no insight to the sport. It's almost a career to be a promoter without any way into the sport, as in you were into MMA, you've experienced MMA, you've done this, so you do get like promoters who have a lot of input from MMA fighters, but then you do unfortunately still get the promoters who are just, I'm a fight promoter, I promote fight shows, and it's hard to understand our side without that experience, Yeah,
agree, mate. I mean, the creme de la creme is UFC, their medical team and how they look after fighters is like, I've never seen anything like it. I'd love to see their medical bill after an event, to be honest, just out of curiosity to see, what money has gone into it. But those guys, they take it so. And don't get me wrong, they're in a position financially where they can, But a lot of people say, oh, the promotion should pay for the safe MMA. I disagree. I've got fighters and we fund ourselves, because you may say to me, right, Rich, come and fight on my show. Okay, well, you've got to pay my safe MMA, and you invest 560 quid into 10 fighters. So there's 5,600 quid, right, straight away. But those 10 fighters got no loyalty to you. They may say after one fight, oh, that wasn't for me, I'll call it a day. Or, so, it's not a good investment financially. The promotions are putting on the shows. They're making sure that you're safe. They're making sure that all the right things are in place. I think the least a fighter can do is invest 500 quid into putting himself in a position.
How much do you fucking want it? How much do you want it? Do you know what I mean? It's one of those scenarios. I still get now, and I bet you still get now, mate, people who have been at your class for 6 months and still haven't got shin guards.
Yeah.
It's fucking 40 quid. Yeah. Like, how much do you want it? Like, I seen on your Facebook, you've been to the cinema 4 times and you went out for a meal with your missus. Say to your missus, I want to do this.
Drinking beer everywhere. I say to my amateurs now, put a tenner a week away.
Yeah.
Put a tenner a week away now, that's all. Put a tenner a week away, and then you're going to have all your, in your last year of being an amateur, put £10 a week away, and then when it's time to go pro, you got 500 quid in the bank, and you're good to go. You're cleared for all your medicals.
Yeah, exactly, mate. It's just a case of you need to listen to your coach. It's the number one thing. I mean, I didn't really have an MMA coach. We had coaches and we put everything together, and I was lucky. I was around Ronnie Mann, James Thompson, Zelg, and so we had a good group of us, and lots of the guys went on to do really well. So I was lucky. But you've got a coach now. We've got MMA coaches. They've experienced the shit. Listen to them, because I guarantee you one thing: a coach doesn't give a fuck about anything but you and your record. That is it.
Yeah.
As a coach, mate, I mean, I coach for free where I'm coaching now, because we're a small gym, we're helping it build and stuff, and there's no fucking money in it. So I coach for free. Personal training's a different matter, but when it comes to coaching the class, I coach class for free. When I had my gym, obviously, I had to keep the gym going. For 5 years, Olympians MMA was bleeding me dry at points, as you all know yourself.
Yeah.
And the only reason I wanted people to fight on a fight show was for them. I would definitely say to people, don't fight. I'd rather you didn't fight, because I care about you and your record. You getting a loss on your record won't affect me, because I got another fighter or 4 more fighters. You getting a loss on your record will affect you, and that is going to affect me, because I'm putting everything I've learned, I'm giving you all of that, So listen to your coaches, because the only thing that matters to them is you and your career.
Yeah, exactly, mate. And I mean, as you said, there's no, if you're in this sport for money at the early end of the career, early part of the career, you're in the wrong sport. There's no money. There's not.
Yeah.
After that, how many of us as coaches have spent months and months, where we've gone weekend after weekend away for no cost, costing us money, in fact, petrol money, hotels, just to make sure that the fighter's in a good place and all that. You, at the end of the day, the fighter needs to take responsibility. They are responsible for getting up every day and thinking, I'm going to give this day 100%, because they're wasting our time if they're not. We've got a cracking coaching setup now. We've got a fantastic facility. If you're serious about the sport, you can walk through our doors. You've got everything you need as within the facility, as in equipment, cage, matted area, fitness suite. We've also got high-level Thai coach, high-level wrestling coach, high-level jiu-jitsu coach, high-level MMA coach. So everything is on a plate for you, but I can't make you come here and train 5 days a week. You've got to do that yourself. You've got to. I say to everybody, there's no shame in losing. Recently went down to London and Josh Reed lost a great fight against Nathan Fletcher.
Great fight, though.
I never will be annoyed with Josh losing a fight, because his attitude and his commitment to training for the 12 weeks leading up to it is as good as anybody in the world. He gives 100% in the fight. And when it's all said and done, whether he's won, lost or draw, I sit down with him and I know that kid has given me everything, you know. But there's nothing more frustrating. You probably aware of this as a coach yourself, but somebody's not put the work in the 10 weeks leading up to the fight, and then they don't get that result, and it's like, oh, I could have done more. Well, yeah, you could have done some more. You should have not been drinking 4 weeks ago. You should have been training Friday last week. You should have come to Tuesday the week before. I've got no issue with a loss, as long as that loss has been on the back of you giving it everything in the gym and giving it everything on the night. It's a 50-50 sport. It's a 50% of fighters win every week. You know, so at every given week, 50% of fights that happen, somebody's picking up a loss. You know, so you can't all be winning. You know, there's an old adage that one of my old coaches used to say to me is, everyone that fights is a champion and the winner is a champion of champions. And that's stuck with me for a long old time, you know.
Great saying.
But it's important that all the champions and the champions of champions have given you 100%, because I'm not going to give you 100% if you're not going to give it back to me. You're wasting my time.
Yeah, and the thing is if you want to listen to your mates who are patting you on the back, who aren't in the gym training, that's fine, but their opinion's not going to mean anything in the long run.
Exactly.
And the last person to pat you on the back should be the coach. He should be the guy who's critical of everything, because I'm looking for your flaws. I'm not looking for the things you're good at. I've seen the things you're good at. You don't need to come and say to me, oh, but did you see the way I threw? I've noted that. What I did see is the way you didn't check this, or the way you didn't. And I'm going to be critical until you come out of that cage with a win or a loss. And I'm going to say, you fucking put it in there. Forget the result. You put the work in. And then I'm going to be your biggest number one fan. Until that, I'm going to be the most critical person you've...
Yeah, our job's to be honest, isn't it? Not massage the egos, you know. So... Yeah, it's a thankless task, because, you know, we put a lot of hours in as a coaching team with it. You know, my attitude is this: I'm in that gym every night and I train every night. So I'd say to the lads, I'm 49 years of age. If I can commit to getting in there every day, it's not me that's going to be earning, you know, the hundreds of thousands once you're an established UFC star. I'm not going to have that money. You're going to have that money. But I'm happy to help you and put you on that path. But, you know, if I can step on the mat at 49 without any excuses and do the session with everybody else, there's no reason why anybody can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's nice to get money, mate, but how rewarding is it to be in some shitty leisure centre at a grappling tournament and see someone pull off a triangle or an omoplata in a white belt competition?
Yeah, I say this way, I take as much pleasure from the young geeky kid that was bullied in school. Come and start training, take yourself out of the comfort zone and do a jiu-jitsu competition and take not necessarily a medal, just take a couple of victories, you know, and just to watch that look on their face. And, you know, for me, I treat everybody the same. When you come under our roof, you know, Jack doesn't get treated any different. Brett doesn't get treated any different. Marshall doesn't. They're all treated equally right through. And I think that's been a recipe for success. I've been to a lot of gyms where you have your clique at the top, and if your face doesn't fit, but I give as much time to the white belt jiu-jitsu class as I do to the professional MMA session, you know. So it's important that, and again, about being a team, you know, as you said, in the early days, you'd have to travel around, you know. How fortunate they now to be able to come under one roof. And as I said, I've high level tuition in wrestling, boxing, jiu-jitsu, MMA, Thai boxing, you know, and the importance of a team is what I've always instilled into my guys, because yes, you fight alone, but if you've not got teammates you can trust and teammates around you that can work with you and willing to give up their evenings and come and help you prepare for 10 weeks, you're not going to do it on your own. It's one of those sports where we fight as we've got a saying, we fight as individuals, but we prepare as a team. And, you know, without your team, you know, you can't be an individual. You could be the best fighter in the world. If you've got nobody to spar with, or nobody to come and grapple with, or do your strength and conditioning, or hold pads, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Reed walked into one of my classes years ago. I'd already fought. Paul was just thinking about starting it. He came into one of my stand-up classes. I used to teach at David Lloyd for Trojan. And Paul came in, and he was just an older guy, like probably 35 at the time. Older guy, tough as fucking nails. But you sort of like, not laugh, but you sort of dismissed him, sort of, oh, that's just someone who's training to train, you know. Next minute, cunt's got 5 fights under his belt, you know. He's Paul Reed. Now, we talk about his relationship. He comes to me to talk. I know his daughter really well. He knows my family well. If I've got issues, we speak. We've cornered all around the world together. We've become, and it's the epitome of, from this sport, we both were fighters. Then we started training together. Then we were part of a team together. Then we built a team together. Now, okay, he teaches Sweatbox. I teach at A3. We both still fight out of Olympians. I fight out of Sweatbox. He fights out of Sweatbox. I fight out of A3 as well. And but it's the epitome of a team. You know, I've lost brain cells for him to win fights. Yes, and he's done the same for me. And I can't give you. I could never give him any more than the fact I've let him beat brain cells out of my brain. And he's done the same thing for me. And it's the acceptance of this sport will always take more from you. No matter how good you get, it will take more from you than it will give.
Yeah.
So value the shit that it's giving you.
Yeah, spot on. And as you said, it creates a camaraderie, doesn't it? I mean, I'm very fortunate that my group of guys are not just teammates. There's nobody on that mat that's not friends, and I think that's a big thing. So when one goes to fight, you can see the entire team wants him to do well, and that's not necessarily the case at every gym. There's bad feeling in some places, and there's jealousy amongst individuals. But whether it's a two-fight amateur fighting or one of the guys in the UFC, the attitude of the team, everybody gets behind everybody and wants everybody to do well. So I think it's important. You have a good team, as you said, you become friends for life. I'm best friends with people that I've been training with for 20 years. We've got that relationship, and if we stop training tomorrow, we'd still be mates because, as you said, you've shared some tough times together.
Yeah, and I mean, even to the extent of, like, you and I only know each other through MMA.
Yeah.
We met just because we've coached opposite or coached on the same night, or I fought on the same night as one of your guys, or however the case may be. But you get a real sense of friends because you've been through the same shit together. You've sat there on a chair next to each other. Both your fighters have lost. You've looked at each other and you're like, it was a tough one tonight. Whatever, know exactly where the other person is at that moment.
It's a sport where you have the highest of highs, the lowest of lows. There's no shades of grey with it. It's either win or lose. And it takes a certain mindset to be in it for a long time, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So what brought you here, mate? So you started, you're saying you're like 35, 36 or 30 odd when you started. So what got you here?
I was 29 when I started traditional jiu-jitsu. As a kid, I'd done a bit of judo. In my 20s, then I'd done some karate and judo with a group of doormen that used to run classes out of a nightclub function room. But I was 29, I got introduced to traditional jiu-jitsu, Rossi and Nakaro, the Taijutsu Kai, which had a lot of Carly Gracie influence. There was a lot of grappling. And I just got hooked. I turned up at a team called Falcons Martial Arts. There was a young Joe Duffy there who was in the UFC, and these 15-year-old kids were whooping my ass, choking me out, submitting me. And those type of situations will make or break an individual. I've been doing a fair bit of training and thought I was a tough nut. And this was a real ego breaker, if I'm honest. I'd gone up there thinking I'd be able to do as I please, and come from me absolutely shocked, no idea at all how difficult a time I was going to have with youngsters, not even at my own age. So started training every night, went on to be one of the most active competitors at the team, started doing traditional jiu-jitsu. Remember the old jiu-jitsu kumites? And then I started doing some nogi grappling, the British Opens and whatnot I've travelled to Ireland, I think it was in 2001 or 2002, done a jiu-jitsu open over there. And it just spiraled from there. I ended up becoming really addicted with it. And I think it was like jiu-jitsu. Then I started, I think it was jiu-jitsu 2001, 2002. And I think I had my first no headshot MMA bout 2002, 2003 at one of the ML sports.
Yeah.
So it was just progression from there. I've done the matted shows, and I started doing the headshots on the Cage Warriors events in the boxing ring.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of pro fights then down Strength and Honor. I went down there with Dave Matthews and Andy. I had a fight down there. Done one on Mark Goddard's Armour show and a couple local, but it was just a transfer. One of those things that gripped me, I wasn't a fighter naturally as a person. I'm not somebody who's going around. I'm not from a family of fighters. Just something I fell into, to be honest, from working in the pubs and meeting certain people. And as I said, it's been a brilliant journey. Started back in, I was 29. It would have been 2000. I was 29.
So what was your sport growing up? Like
football.
As a kid and stuff? Football, yeah?
Football, yeah. I wasn't a bad footballer. Played for a lot of the local sides, played for college and whatnot. But I didn't have no pace, if I'm honest. So I used to play centre half because I could read a game, but I wasn't the fastest person on the field. So I was never going to be a top level footballer, but I was good enough to play at a decent level, won a few trophies. But like I said, while I was playing football, I was doing these sessions, where there was a judo black belt and a karate black belt, taking these classes 2-3 times a week. And I was enjoying it, but on hindsight, they just toughened me up a bit, really. You know what I mean? It was lads, not with a great amount of technical knowledge, but we were knocking lumps out of each other. And then I seen a mate of mine who still trains with me now, Steve Jane, one day when I was training down their centre, and he said, "You training still?" I said, "Yeah, what about you?" "I'm doing jiu-jitsu. Do you fancy having a grapple?" And he must have submitted me in 3 minutes, probably 6, 7 times, and it was a bit of a culture shock. I couldn't, that you can't breathe, and you think you're having an asthma attack. So he told me where the gym was, and like I said, I turned up to his club. That's when I met Joe Duffy at 15, who submitted me God knows how many times in a 4-minute round. But like I said, I'm one of these guys. I didn't have no ego. I didn't have no reputation of being a tough nut, so I just kept going back, training 5 nights a week. My first competition after 6 weeks of training, and it just went from there. Like, it was a bag of nerves when I turned up to this jiu-jitsu comp. Could quite easily have walked through the fire exit, no problem at all, and left. But I ended up taking a gold medal, and I was hooked. It was like I say to everybody, unless you've done it, you can't explain to people that adrenaline. You can't, and it is addictive. It's the worst drug in the world, unfortunately. And at 49, I still crave that drug. And the reality is, I can't go into relapse because I'll get sparked out now. Do you know what I mean?
The thing is,
something. I say to the lads, make the most of it now while you're young and fit, because sooner or later it catches up. I thought I'd be doing this forever when I was 29. But you can't. But you get older. Injuries catch up with you. Illness, and you just don't recover like you used to. But that's how I got into it, mate. It was just jiu-jitsu, onto the MMA scene, and then obviously once I started my own club, I started traveling to Brazilian jiu-jitsu clubs and progressed through the belts then, and the Brolio Estamar then as well.
Yeah, you just like you say, mate, it's a drug, and it is the highest of highs. There's nothing like it, but it's more deadly than smack if it goes wrong.
Yeah.
If you get addicted to heroin, you're going to be a junkie. But you get addicted to this and don't know when to quit, you start getting bingoed and stuff. It's not. Yeah, it's. I can see from me now. I often think, like, is that urge ever going to go? Will it go? Where I'm like, oh, if I get ready, could I take one last minute?
It never goes, unfortunately, mate. It never goes. But you just learn to live with it. We're like recovering addicts then. You know what I mean? So, like I said, we're 38. So 2009, I think, was my last fight. So I'm, 2020? 2021 now.
Yeah, so 12 years almost.
12 years clean.
Well, I'm glad I've gone out on it. If that was my last fight, I'm glad I went out with a head kick victory. I can rest on that, So what you're doing, you obviously make like a one of the most influential people in Wales for MMA and possibly in the UK. Whether you'd say that, that's irrespective. I'm saying it as someone who's seen the journey and stuff, But other than that, what do you do now, mate, away from MMA? Is it just does it take everything, or?
It does. I still work. I work in a school, a comprehensive school. I'm a behaviour manager there, so I just deal with the vulnerable kids, behavioural kids. It suits as well, the hours, works around the gym, and also it's only 39 weeks a year. But add to that, I've got a good relationship with the people in charge there. So if I need a couple of weeks off to go to America with Jack or Abu Dhabi, there's never an issue. I get the time off, so it works well.
Yeah, I hear you, mate. You got that. I mean, that's priority, isn't it? Really, if you can't make a living from the gym, you need something that's going to fit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to be.
And to be fair, whereas it's a job I enjoy, I get a lot of satisfaction out of the work we do there as well. So, will I be there long time? It's hard to say at the moment, but. At the moment, I'm still enjoying it. It's something, it pays well, and it's a job I enjoy doing.
Yeah, I hear you, mate. Other than that, mate, I guess it's just Love Island. You and I had like a mutual thing of watching Love. I was a massive Love Island fan up to the last one, and I see that you're constantly on the Love Island as well.
I love the Love Island, mate. Yeah, I like trolling on the Facebook, mine, because some of the reactions I have off it as well, But I was devastated it got cancelled last year. But I did follow the Australian one. I didn't mind that. I enjoyed that when I was on.
Did you?
Yeah.
I've not indulged in it. That was when it got cancelled. I was like, right, that's my get out of jail free.
No, listen. You've got to watch that Australian one. It's a good series. You'll enjoy that.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
I'll have to.
Like I said, outside of the sport, I don't really do a lot. It consumes me, you know. I'm a proper MMA geek, for want then of a better term. You know, I'm constantly watching on television in my downtime, constantly trying to look at different techniques. If I see something, I'm a bit OCD with it. Do you know what I mean? I'll if I see something happening in a fight, I can fixate on that for a couple of weeks. Do you know what I mean? Where I want to make sure I'm fully aware of it, fully understanding, and you know, and understand the situation. But apart from that, mate, I got a caravan down in Tenby where I spend a little bit of downtime. I haven't had a lot this year. No, like you said, it's all concealed. I don't have a lot of time off, to be honest, mate. It's this year has been a bit different. Do you know what I mean? It's hit me. It's not me for six because of one of these people who's got something to do every day. But this year has been the same for all of us. It's knocked us back a bit, but no, we're still here, mate. And hopefully, like I said, come April, May, we see some normality and we can get back to doing what we love doing.
Yeah, what about fighter-wise, mate? I saw, like, obviously Jack with his last... I mean, I'm like, Jack and John Phillips, fuck me, the UFC must have had a thing against those two, man. Fuck me. Like, they gave him some tough fucking runs.
Yeah, to be fair,
John...
you know, you look at Marshman, he's had Santos, who's fought for a world title. You know, he's fought quite a few top 10 guys. You know, they put him in some killers, you know, but it's the nature of the game. It's a UFC. You don't get to pick who you fight in.
Yeah.
And that's why it is so important, as I said, to have that apprenticeship before you sign, because they can throw anything at you, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, Jack, obviously a great fucking guy, lovely guy. Seen his career develop, hard as nails. And then with John Phillips, like John's easiest fight was probably Jack Marshman, who's fucking a nightmare for anybody. So it was not like... I look at these things and I'm looking at those two guys, you know, like pioneers of Welsh MMA, and you're watching like, fuck me, what the UFC got against
I was gutted they matched them, you know. I know John was calling for the fight, and you know, I didn't want the fight because there's enough fighters in our division without two Welsh lads having to fight at the highest level, and there were only two Welsh fighters in that division, and it's put a loss on one of their records. But it is what it is. It's happened, you know. Marshman won. You know, so great for us as a team, you know, but at the same time still disappointed for John. But it is what it is, mate. You know, like I said, we've always said Jack and Brett trained together. Now Jack, Shore and Brett Johns, but even before they did, that was one fight that we would never tell. We made that clear at the UFC. You know, we'll fight anyone apart from Brett Johns because he trains with us a lot. Now he's training with me full time, so it'll never happen, and he's just signed for Bellator, so it makes things a bit easier for us. But you know, it is what it is, pal. But fingers crossed, April, May, June, we'll see some lifting of restrictions, and domestically we can get back to where we were, and not just the upper echelon of the UFCs and Bellators. We can get the other guys fighting then as well.
Hopefully, mate. So just quickly before I let you shoot, mate, who at your gym should people be keeping an eye on up through the amateur ranks and stuff? Tip out a couple of names who do, so people when they watch this, it'd be good, or listen to it, it'd be good for them to go and do a bit of research on your gym. And I know you're going to say follow everybody, but you know, like, I think people should start following people's amateur career. So who are you shouting out at the moment? Like, you know, this is, keep your eyes on these guys.
I got two bantamweights there. Levi Batchelor and Kenzie Jones. I think two of them have got all the potential to go as far as they want. 19, I think they are both 19. Been training with me now good few years. They've had a couple of amateur fights again. Last year would have been a big year. I've had them probably fight 5-6 times last year, but obviously that never came to fruition. So I think both 2-0 or 1-0. They'd have been around 6-7-0. They're good. I put them in. They're part of our bubble for the camp for Jack Shaw and Brett when they fought in, and them two lads in 19 that go and hold it on with MP. So that puts in perspective. I've got loads of youngsters coming through. Jack Beasley, King Darcy, Ellis Westacott. I can go on and on and on. I don't like singing about because it puts a fair bit of pressure. One lad that I will mention, I've got a 15-year-old boy there called Johan Thomas. And I think Johan's going to be the best fighter Wales has ever produced.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
It's a big shout, that is, mate.
Yeah, he's 15. He's part of our pro setup already. And I mean, if I didn't tell you his age and you come and watched him train, you would be saying, when's this kid going pro?
Yeah.
You know, so...
You get him like that. I like Ronnie Mann was that for me when we were back in the day. You watch Ronnie Mann... at 16 years old.
Yeah.
Like he looked as good then as these guys do now. And why he didn't get to the top of the top, just
I remember Ronnie, before I finish off the story, Ron, we was in Ireland, Northern Ireland, and I didn't know him personally, Ronnie, but he was just like 15 or 16-year-old kid under Rossi in the car, wasn't he, at the time?
Yeah.
And he entered the adult division in Belfast and just cleaned up, submitted everybody.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable to watch.
Yeah, one of the first black belts that was given a black belt over here. Got like black belt from Braulio, really young. Just phenomenal, mate, phenomenal. But
good guy as well.
Great, great guy, great coach. Mate, listen, it's been lovely talking to you, mate. Honestly,
nice to catch up with you guys.
Thank you very much for the time. I'll have to get your Jack on, mate. Definitely, we'll get sit down and have a chat with Jack. My podcast is obviously broken up. Some's MMA, some's falconry, but definitely have to get Jack on before he fights again. But otherwise, mate, thank you very much for the time. It's been a pleasure.
No problems, Wes, and hopefully see you at the show soon, pal.
Nice one, mate. You take care.
Ta-ra, pal. Ta-ra.